Giorgia Meloni has denied having discussions about a deal with Elon Musk to provide secure telecommunications for the Italian government. Not only did Italy's Prime Minister Meloni confirm it in the end-of-year presser postponed to January, but a statement issued earlier by her office said that no agreement had been signed. But what would the deal mean for Italy-EU relations, and what about the security concerns at play? The government insists the EU's efforts to bridge the gap with Starlink might have arrived a bit too late.
Innanzitutto è giusto fare chiarezza, da parte del governo non è stato firmato nulla, nonostante ovviamente ci siano delle ottime interlocuzioni, degli ottimi rapporti tra Roma e Washington, ci sono sempre stati e ci saranno in futuro. Questa cosa che si sta facendo la si sta facendo nell'interesse dell'Italia e nell'interesse dell'Europa, si valuterà, come è giusto che sia, quale possa essere la soluzione migliore, in attesa ovviamente che anche l'Europa eventualmente offra dal punto di vista tecnico una certezza e una sicurezza a cui oggi noi dobbiamo far fronte, ma che purtroppo ancora non c'è.
From a political standpoint, the deal could have a significant impact on several fronts. The EU Commission explained that Italy is a sovereign state and that the agreement would not be incompatible with IRIS², the EU's flagship satellite system project.
E sarebbe un segnale in realtà ulteriore di vicinanza personale fra Meloni, Musk e quindi anche, allo stato attuale delle cose, Trump. Bisognerebbe capire anche che tipo di tensioni questo potrebbe creare fra l'Italia e l'Europa. Insomma, l'Italia oggi è un po' sospesa, tra gli Stati Uniti e l'Europa.
An Italian representative for Musk's aerospace businesses stated that Italy would have full control of its data. Frediano Finucci, a journalist and author who recently wrote a book on the use of satellites in conflicts around the world, believes there is more to it.
Starlink comunque avrebbe la possibilità di capire se, ad esempio, da un'ambasciata oppure da una nave militare, ad un certo punto parte una mole di comunicazioni insolita, un po' come accadeva alla fine dell'Ottocento e primi del Novecento, quando le ambasciate andavano ai telegrafi per spedire i famosi dispacci diplomatici alle capitali. Ebbene, che cosa facevano le spie? Le spie si appostavano di fronte ai telegrafi e capivano, se c'era troppo movimento, che qualcosa non andava. Non si può impedire a Starlink di tenere traccia, ad esempio, del traffico. Si tratta di una scelta di fiducia, si tratta di una scelta prettamente politica del governo italiano.
Giorgio Orlandi for Euronews in Rome.
Irregular entries into the European Union have reached their lowest level in 3 years. 239,000 irregular border crossings into the EU were recorded in 2024, according to Frontex, the European Border and Coast Guard Agency. This represents a 38% drop compared to 2023.
It went down a lot due to the EU's support for the Tunisian and Libyan authorities, which intercept boats attempting to cross to the European Union. There has also been a marked decrease on the Balkan route, the Western Balkan route, where I think the reason is different. It's probably the EU's effort to work with the Western Balkan countries to align their visa policy with the visa policy of the EU.
Irregular border crossings in the central Mediterranean and Western Balkans fell by 59% and 78% respectively in 1 year. On the other hand, irregular arrivals to the Canary Islands have increased by 18% in a year, putting pressure on Spain. They have nearly tripled at the EU's eastern land borders, mainly due to Belarus's use of migrants as a tool to destabilize the EU.
Irregular migration flows do not disappear as a result of these policies, but their direction and also the level of risk for human life might change. So increased surveillance or deterrence measures along certain routes might have an impact on the change.
However, these figures should be taken with caution as some crossings go undetected. They also do not distinguish between economic migrants and asylum seekers.
For instance, how many people actually of those who have attempted to enter, despite the many obstacles they have to escape from unsafety and war, how many of those numbers hide asylum seekers? people legitimately seeking asylum with a right to asylum in Europe? How many of people behind those numbers have lost their lives in their ways to Europe?
In 2024, more than 2,300 people were reported missing crossing the Mediterranean.
My fellow Americans, I'm speaking to you tonight from the Oval Office.
U.S. President Joe Biden used his farewell address on Wednesday to deliver stark warnings of a dangerous concentration of power in the hands of the ultra-wealthy.
Today, an oligarchy is taking shape in America of extreme wealth, power, and influence that literally threatens our entire democracy, our basic rights and freedoms, and a fair shot for everyone to get ahead.
Biden referenced former President Dwight Eisenhower's final address in 1961, in which he warned of a military-industrial complex.
6 decades later, I'm equally concerned about the potential rise of a tech-industrial complex that could pose real dangers for our country as well. Americans are being buried under an avalanche of misinformation and disinformation, enabling the abuse of power. The free press is crumbling. Editors are disappearing. Social media is giving up on fact-checking.
Biden used his 15-minute address to offer a model for a peaceful transfer of power and raise concerns about his successor, Donald Trump, without mentioning his name. His remarks come after some of the world's richest individuals in the technology industry have flocked to Trump's side in recent months.
The European Union is laying preliminary ground to a wide-range lifting of sanctions on Syria, according to a non-paper seen by Euronews. The bloc is considering lifting sanctions on transportation, exports of oil and gas, and financial and banking activities. The informal EU document says that any possible change to terrorist designations of al-Qaeda-affiliated groups, like Syria's ruling Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, must be implemented at the UN Security Council level before the bloc adopts it. The paper says that delisting terror groups will have to be conditions-based as to prevent any risk of financing terrorism. The non-paper was produced by the EU Council for negotiations and is expected to be substantively discussed during a meeting of EU foreign ministers on January 27th. The document states that the country's ousted president, Bashar al-Assad, and affiliates cannot benefit from the lifting and will still be subjected to sanctions.
I had an idea that's been following me ever since, and that was crazy, maybe idiotic, but at the same time, in my mind, really poetic thought to put a red house with white corners on the surface of the moon. And now it's going to happen. It's going to reach space, separate, land on the moon after 4 months of traveling, releasing the rover. The rover will go out, release the house, take some pictures, and leave it alone, standing there for thousands and maybe millions of years.
Pope Francis fell on Thursday and hurt his right arm, just weeks after a similar incident in which he injured his chin. Francis didn't break his arm, but a sling was put on as a precaution. The incident occurred at his home in the Vatican. The 88-year-old Pope has battled medical problems, including long bouts of bronchitis and a major intestinal surgery. He often has to use a wheelchair because of bad knees. But despite constant speculation about his health, Francis says he has no plans to resign.